Hi, Danville. Welcome. We are 10-8 in service, which means we're here to safeguard the lives, rights, and property of the people we serve. I'm Alan Shields, Chief of Police for the town, and we're going to cover 3 weeks worth of traffic and crime. I appreciate everyone being patient over the last couple of weeks when we had other obligations that we had to take care of and weren't able to make this show. But this is important to us because this is our opportunity to connect with all of you. This is something that we do once a week, and the goal is to provide access to the police department. So if you have questions or concerns, or you just want an update on what is happening in the town from a public safety standpoint, we can help and provide that information. We do have some evergreen topics that we'd like to cover. The FEMA All Hazards Checklist. Go ahead and go to our link down in the description and download that. That's going to provide you information on those low frequency but very high risk events such as a wildfire or a public safety power shutdown, those sort of things. So you will be prepared, and that's going to what is going to help you to survive should one of those incidents take place. If you look on the wildfire, for example, there are some tips right there in the guide. Also, we have our guide, the Contra Costa County Residents Guide to Wildfire Preparedness and Evacuation. And we've got a community warning system, and this is how you're going to find out what it is that is happening. In the wildfire guide, though, you can see that there's just some basics on what you can do to be prepared and have a kit. I don't know about all of you, but I was used to PSPS, but now I guess we have an EPSS or ESPP or some other acronym that means the power is going to get shut off probably even more frequently. And that affected us for about a day. Fortunately, I have to practice what I preach, so I don't get to not to be prepared as the chief of police for the town. So I do have a generator. We do have backup supplies. And thankfully, I'm able to plug the generator in, and I'm not worried about my fridge. It runs, and it stays, my food stays good, so I don't lose any food. And then I can also use that generator to help power things like my continuous hot water heater. So my family can take warm showers. It helps with cooking food. We actually used it to power the Traeger and do some, smoked meats. So consider what your needs are and use those guides to be prepared. The other is we talked about the community warning system. I do want you to sign up for that if you haven't yet, and also sign up for Nixle. Nixle is where you can get alerts direct to your, if I can find mine, direct to your cell phone. And if we have a road closure like you saw for the 4th of July, we put one out 2 days in advance and then the morning of, so that all of you knew where the road closure was. And we want to make sure that you're getting that information in a timely manner. All right, so this is a live show. So if you have a question, go ahead and post it in the chat. I monitor it during the show, and then I also monitor it for about 10 minutes after. If I can get to your question during the show, I'd be happy to answer it. If not, I'll cover it back in the chat later on. All right, so let's look at crime and traffic. Since it's 3 weeks long, I'm just going to go 3 weeks worth of traffic, and then I'm going to go 3 weeks worth of crime. So we'll kind of hit one and then the other. So let's take a look. As always, you can go to communitycrimemap.com and you can see this information for yourself. We do several uploads a day there. The only thing that's usually not on here is sexual crimes and family offense type things. Other than that, you're going to see it. You're going to see the burglaries, the robberies, and the thefts. That's all going to be on there. You can also get information about the sexual offender registry on there as well, or at least for those that report. Traffic, last 3 weeks. This is going to be a tale of two cities, I guess. June 12th through the 18th, we only had 2 accidents that were reported. We had 1 injury collision, and we had a non-injury hit and run on Communitas Sahara near Glasgow. In that case, the suspect was identified. We were able to solve that crime, and we'll be forwarding it on to the DA's office. On the 16th, that's where the injury collision was on Ceremon Valley Boulevard in Elworthy Ranch. And I know if you ever drive that road, speed is usually a factor, inattention is usually a factor. And if you've ever been on that road, you've probably seen our cops down there. They park right in those areas, and they're really, really at my direction, trying hard to tamp down the speeding and the inattention, the cell phone use. So please tell your friends, don't speed on that street. Don't be on the cell phones. All right, next week, June 19th through the 25th, we had 1 injury collision, a couple of property, and 1 hit and run. The non-injury collisions, we had 1 on the 19th on Communitas Sahara at Messian Place. We had another one on the 21st on Communitas Sahara and Greenbrook Drive, so kind of in that same area. And then on the 23rd, we had an injury collision on Communitas and Wood Ranch, so that's a little bit further out east. And then on the 25th, we had a non-injury collision on the 400 block of Diablo Road. On I skipped forward one too many there. Okay, so June 26th through July 2nd for collisions. We had 3 injury collisions, and I'm going to apologize for the map. It was not updated this afternoon when we put this slide in there. We had 1 property and 1 hit and run. On the 26th, the injury collision was on Greenbrook and Paraiso, and this was this was something unique, and I don't know that this is one that's often misunderstood. This is where the cyclist was going in the same direction that the car was parked, and the driver of the car decided to get out and just open the door. And when they opened the door, the cyclist hit the open door. The obligation is on the driver in that instance to make sure that before you open the door, that you look in the mirror over the shoulder and make sure that it's clear, and make sure that there's not, because it could be a car too, right? And so we want to make sure that people understand that. In this case, it was the driver opened the door, cyclist hit it, and had a slight injury there. All right, on the 28th, there was an injury collision on Sycamore Valley Road near the I-680 North on-ramp. The 28th wasn't a good day. We had another collision on Camino Tasajara out at Wood Ranch, so it was 2 in 2 weeks. And then a non-injury collision on Sycamore Valley Road and Tunbridge Road. And then on the 1st, we had a non-injury hit and run on the 600 block of El Cerro Boulevard. All right, so that for collisions, that's quite a bit. The first of the 3 weeks wasn't bad. A couple of collisions. I think we averaged between 2 and 3 reported collisions a week if you look back 2-3 years. And I know those might be the asterisk year where we had a little COVID and we had a reduction in overall traffic volume. And so we're kind of going back up to our typical volumes, and we're creeping up to the collision rate of 4, 5, and 6 years ago, kind of in those averages. But we'd still like to see better driving. And we know that there's an inverse relationship between the level of enforcement and the number of accidents. So if accidents are creeping up, we're going to try to push our enforcement up, and that could be verbal warnings, written warnings, and citations, whatever the officer believes is going to be effective so that they can reduce those collisions. And if we can get those collisions to start going down, then we can start easing up on the enforcement. Always during those times, what we're doing, though, is as we see frequent areas where collisions are occurring, or if we get complaints, we're going to work with our traffic engineers and see if they can't come up with a creative solution that's more temporary. We know that enforcement is more like whack-a-mole. We go out and we work speed in one area. We work a stoplight or a stop sign in another area. We work inattention somewhere else. It has an effect, but that effect wears off. If our engineers can design the roads so that people are forced or feel compelled to slow down, that's a much better win, right? No one gets a ticket, no accidents, and drivers are doing what we need them to do. All right, so crime. Generally speaking, we did have a couple of violent crimes. Typically in Danville, we don't get very much Part 1 violent crimes. And when we talk about crime, we're always talking about homicide, rape, robbery, burglary, all thefts, vehicle theft, and aggravated assault. So the homicide, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. Aggravated assault is something more than pushing and shoving. It usually involves a deadly weapon or something like that, so or a significant injury. We usually don't get very many of the violent crimes. In the past 3 weeks, we had 2. So that's pretty significant for Danville. Maybe not significant for other areas, but it is significant for us. So let's take a look. The 12th through the 18th, we had petty theft from a vehicle on the Marshall's parking lot. The 14th, we had a distraction theft of a necklace, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. And that was at the 800 block of El Cerro Boulevard. On the 16th, there was property stolen from a work truck, and they also attempted to steal the vehicle. Suspects were identified, and the case will be forwarded to the DA's office when done. The distraction theft, and we've talked about this before. Usually, if someone takes property from you, from your person, it's usually going to be a robbery because it's usually done by force or fear. You know, someone may have a weapon, may threaten violence, and say, give me your wallet, your purse, money, watch, whatever that may be. And they're using violence or the threat of violence as a means to get the property. So that's a robbery. A distraction theft is typically where attention is diverted. Maybe there's a lot of conversation, a couple of people. Maybe they may ask you to put on, we've seen it in the past where they say, hey, try this ring on. This is very special to me. Take your ring off, and they'll help you take the ring off. They'll put their junk ring on you, and then they'll take your very good ring, and they'll part with it, and you'll never know. What we say is if you see this, and usually what you'll see 1 to 2 people coming up, maybe even more. We've seen it as many as 3 to 5. where they'll come up and they're really engaging you. They're trying to be very persuasive. They actually start to touch you, like maybe an arm, a shoulder. Maybe they want to hug you. The bottom line is if you're feeling comfortable, if it's not a family member or a friend, they shouldn't be touching you. And so you can put a stop to that. If you get really uncomfortable, you can always call the police, and we'd be happy to come out and help you through that. But really be careful of people that are trying to persuade you or do something that you normally wouldn't do. If you normally wouldn't take your necklace off, if you normally wouldn't take your rings off in public, you normally wouldn't take your watch off, don't do it for them. All right. Okay, so let's look. This is where we had a cluster of thefts, and we had an aggravated assault. So let's take a look at what happened June 19th through the 25th. On the 21st, we had a theft of property from a locked vehicle on the 200 block of Hearts. And then on the 22nd, we had an assault with a knife during a family dispute. The suspect was arrested and ultimately charged by the DA's office. On the 22nd, we also had 4 thefts from locked vehicles in the area of Camino Ramon and Sycamore Valley Road. So this is like your Rose Garden Shopping Center. We always call it the Black Bear Shopping Center, kind of in that area. I know in the exploded view, it looks like a couple of them are on the freeway, but that's because in order to protect people's privacy, they don't pin the icon to the exact location. And then we had a theft of a catalytic converter from a Toyota Prius on St. Beatrice Court on the 23rd. And if you remember, the Toyota Prius seemed to be the car that we were seeing a lot of them stolen from. So our recommendation is if you have a Toyota Prius, try to do something to dissuade thieves from taking it. You can put catalytic converter guards on your car. You can park your car in a driveway or the garage rather. Maybe put motion lights, but it is a crime. And I know we've played the video before, but it only takes about a minute to commit. Our officers do work hard at night, especially as when we see these happening, and you'll see our officers going through the neighborhoods and the areas where those cars and the crimes are occurring, and they really are looking for them. And then on the back end, I mean, we've gone so far, even on catalytic converter cases, to where the suspect cut themselves. We've actually taken the DNA from the blood that was dropped on the ground. We're able to get a match and hold that person accountable. So I want you to know that when we provide prevention tips to you, it doesn't mean that I, as the police department, that we're not doing anything, that we're not absolving ourselves of doing hard work. The staff that are here work absolutely hard, and they do extraordinary levels of follow-up that you typically just don't see elsewhere. Our thought is it's not the value of the crime. So you don't have to have $50,000 or $100,000 worth of property stolen. It's more about the solvability. If we can solve the crime, we'll write the search warrant. We'll go get the DNA. We'll do what we can do to solve the crime, because we realize the person that's stealing that catalytic converter might also be stealing other things or multiple catalytic converters. And the bottom line is it doesn't really matter what the cost is to you. The intrusion and the victimization that you feel when you've had something stolen or someone's entered your property, it can be really bad. So if there's something we can do to make that whole, we want to make that happen. All right, and then last was a theft of an electric motorcycle from the Lunardi's parking lot. And a lot of people think that that is not a vehicle theft, but ultimately it is a vehicle theft. The vehicle code considers that to be a motor vehicle, so it does get listed. All right, last week, July 26th through July 2nd, right before the 4th of July. On the 26th, we had a broken car window, and it looked like it was an attempted theft from the vehicle, and that was at Hat McGee Park. And then on the 27th, we had another theft reported at Hat McGee Park, and this is where a wallet was stolen from a locked vehicle, and the credit cards were later used at Sam's. And I want to say there was something, and I don't usually check next door, but one of our outreach officers was checking it, and she had seen a post where someone had commented and said, you know, the cops didn't show up, and why weren't the cops there, and that sort of thing. And I looked up that particular crime that had occurred, and we absolutely did go out there. We did follow up, and we're continuing to follow up on that case. The other comment was the police department needs to put cameras up in these parks, and we need to do that. Absolutely. I've heard that loud and clear. We're working on a plan to get cameras in our parks, at least in the parking lot areas, in those areas where crime is occurring, so that we can do that. It's not for the purposes of watching people play in the park or anything like that. We just want to, we've identified where crime is occurring, and we want to see what we can do to stop it. And that's going to be one of the techniques that we use to work on it. All right, so what else happened? So on the 27th, we had theft of merchandise from Marshall's. It actually occurred on the 22nd, but was reported on the 27th. On the 27th, we also had a theft of alcohol from Lucky's. It was like 15 bottles of champagne. On the 30th, we had a robbery of the Patelco Credit Union and this was a juvenile suspect that was arrested and booked at juvenile hall. Essentially, without one, the person went in, they were unarmed. They tried to pass a note. The bank reported to us. We arrived, we arrested the person and the juvenile and booked her into juvenile hall. On the marshals, they've got pretty good video surveillance, so I do want to show you a couple of pictures. Maybe you can identify one of these two people. There were actually 3 people there, but one of them is clearly a juvenile in the 10 to 12-year-old range. So we're not going to show that person's photo, but we will show the photo of the other 2. And if you can identify them, my appreciation would be please don't put their name in the chat, or please don't, blast it out. It's not to publicly shame the people. It is, we are trying to identify these people and hold them accountable for the theft that they did. So if you know, you can hit me up on a private message. You can do an email to me, and you can always call our general line at 925-314-3700 and say, I know who the people are. Any one of those is great, and we would appreciate it. So on the 22nd, we had a theft, and these are if you know who these people are, you're going to know from these pictures because they're very, very good pictures. So the 2 people seen in the picture there are the people, 2 of the 3 responsible for the theft at Marshall's on June 22nd. So if you know who they are, we would appreciate a private message or something similar. I'm going to hammer this other message home. But before I do, if there's something in the chat, if there's a question you have, please ask it, and I'll make sure to get to it. Pull this up. There was a comment or a question last few weeks ago about whether or not to report something to the police. Should I even bother? The answer is always yes. We would rather have more information than less. And I'll give you 2 reasons why. The first one is, if there's crime that's happening, like say in a shopping center, but none of the tenants are reporting, we're not going to know to provide additional resources there. We're going to go to the areas where we know problems are occurring, either because we're getting complaints of crime or we're getting complaints of suspicious activity, right? So we're never going to know to go to your shopping center, to your neighborhood. If your car was rifled through and you don't think something was stolen, report it. That may be a link in other crimes. And that's the second point, is your small crime or no crime / suspicious activity might actually be related to other crimes, and evidence might be left in yours. Like if they and this is going to be old, I'm going to say they handled a CD case. No one uses CDs. So how about a perfume bottle? If you had a perfume bottle in your car and they picked it up and then they put it on the seat, there could be fingerprints, there could be DNA on that. And if you're one of 6 crimes that happened that day, like you saw a couple weeks ago, we had 4 cars broken into within 2 shopping centers. And that just means that they went through, smashed windows, reached in, smashed windows, reached in. Very bad. Well, if you were the 5th car and you thought, well, they just unlocked my car, they opened the door and they didn't take anything, they just rummaged around, they, went through the glove box, there could be evidence left behind that we could get. Or where yours was rummaged through might be right in line with a camera from a restaurant or a camera from a bank. And then we'll know to look for evidence there. So when in doubt, put this up. When in doubt, please report it. It's all going to be good information that could lead to good intelligence for us, and we would certainly appreciate it. All right, I'm checking the chat. I don't see anything in the chat, but I do appreciate everyone joining us. I do want to throw our evergreens up there. I want to make sure that people are downloading these and reviewing them. When we have these power shutoffs, we field a lot of phone calls, and I get it, and I get the frustration. Understand that my job for the public safety side isn't necessarily to fix that problem, right? My job is to respond to the problem, and it's to work with community partners to fix the problem. But my job is to make sure that you're prepared, so when these things happen, the impact on you is a lot less. It doesn't mean that we're not working on fixing the problem, but when it relates to these things that happen, whether it's an earthquake, a power shutdown, a fire, I may not be able to solve that problem as it stands, but I can certainly help you be better prepared should it happen. So our recommendation is please download the FEMA All Hazards Guide. That'll keep you safe. And then make sure you download the Wildfire Preparedness and Evacuation Guide and sign up for the Community Warning System alerts, and make sure you sign up for our NICSL alerts as well. That is everything that you can do to be prepared. So David comment, it's after the fact, so I totally forgot to mention it, but we had a great 4th of July parade. And we've got a new lieutenant here, Heather Chansu, that she actually planned it. So it's the administrative lieutenant is typically the person that does the planning, but it's a huge team effort. And so we had our traffic officers out there. We had a lot of, when we talk about the relationship between the sheriff and the town of Danville, we only have 30 officers in Danville, yet I've got 60 or so out at that show, right? That's easily pulling resources from the county. And that's the great part about the relationship that we have, is when we hold an event that brings anywhere from 30 to 40,000 people in, we need our volunteers. We need our people that help with traffic control. But if you want to feel safe and you know that there are observers up top, if you want to know that there's people ready to respond should anything happen, and we prepare for a variety of contingencies, it just takes a lot of staff. And it takes a lot of staff that are well-trained. And that's what the sheriff's office provides, and that's what Danville PD provides. So, Dave, I appreciate you recognizing that. The best thing that can happen is the parade goes off, and our Kiwanis Club does an excellent job. I don't know about you, but they just seem to get better and better at spacing out the floats. Like, we don't get these large gaps, and they're just very good at scheduling that. And you wouldn't believe how much time it takes, but the Kiwanis do a great job of managing that. It is a very, very tricky and hard thing to manage, but they do an excellent job. And frankly, I have to give a lot of kudos to all of the people that come down. I mean, imagine 30,000 people come down, and we throw the street sweepers out. Our maintenance is out there working the street sweeper crews and getting everything cleaned up. But through the efforts of our residents being clean and thoughtful people and packing out what they pack in, so to speak, and then our maintenance crew cleaning stuff up, and our officers being out there, by about 1 or 2 o'clock, you would never know a parade was down there. For the most part, people do very, very well, and it was very enjoyable. So I do appreciate you commenting on that, Dave, and I hope everyone else enjoyed it. I was glad that it wasn't as hot as it was, I think, the Saturday before, where it was upwards of 100 degrees, because that would have been, we've worked those before. Those aren't that fun. those get to be pretty hot. All right, so it looks like that's all we have. I want to thank everyone for joining, and we're 10-10, but we're always 10-8 and in service to all of you. So have a good night.